Hey everyone, Mitch coming in from the Commander's Core studio. Welcome to the show. Okay, so spoiler season moves on, and we've got yet another one of the precons revealed. This time it's the Esper precon, and now we know what amazing backup commander there is. I mean, it's called like a backup commander, right? It's not the face commander, but yeah, sometimes they can be more popular than the face, and this is a really cool commander with a really cool design. Let me introduce to you the Master of Keys. Although, oh wait, no, there's keys. I was gonna say, I see a lot of doors, not keys, but there's like some necklaces with keys on them, so there you go. Anyways, a 3/3 that costs X in Esper colors. It's got flying. Keep in mind, it is an enchantment itself. When it enters, put X counters on it and mill twice X cards. Each enchantment card in your graveyard has escape. The escape cost is equal to that card's mana cost, plus exile 3 other cards from your graveyard. Okay, escape is a very cool and very, very, very powerful mechanic when used properly. And giving every single one of your enchantments in your graveyard escape can be massive and huge. Now, obviously, one thing that you can do with this is just like set yourself up really well by being like, okay, I get a ton of mana, I dump it into this, and I say, I've got a giant flyer, yay! And I've got a lot of things in my graveyard, yay! Yes, you can definitely do that, absolutely. That being said, this deck can also just be very effective by you maybe not depending on this commander, like as a giant mana sink. You can just like get your commander out for 3 mana when you want to, because, you know, it doesn't really matter. I mean, it matters like to fill your graveyard, but you've got plenty of other ways to fill your graveyard. I mean, twice X cards is nice, but yeah, there's also spells that are like, hey, target player, including yourself, mills half their library, and that costs like 4 mana, and you're like, yeah, let's do that. Sign me up for that. Or a spell that'll bring up that I absolutely love that Wizards needs a reprint that basically gives you, you know, your entire library as your graveyard. So there's ways to fill your graveyard super quickly. And when you do so again, now your library is basically, well, your graveyard, which is now an extension of your hand. You basically say like, okay, my graveyard is my hand, at least for my enchantments. And again, you're going to be utilizing so many powerful enchantments, ones that work with your graveyard, ones that do stuff that, yeah, can just absolutely decimate and demolish your opponent's hopes and dreams. There's some really cool things that you can do with this one. So let's talk about some cards that work really well with it right now. So, and these cards already might be in the precon, but if they are not, make sure you consider adding them, or if they're already in the precon, maybe consider, you know, keeping that in there. If you are planning on building around this commander, again, this is the backup commander. The entire deck wasn't really built around this one necessarily, but yeah, these cards can work really well with it. I mean, Fraying Sanity, an amazing card. Enchantment or a curse, enchant player for 3 mana. Beginning of each end step, enchant player mills X cards or X the number of cards from their graveyard from anywhere this turn. Here's the thing. I mean, yeah, you can use this on an opponent if you're going to mill them out, but you're not going to be doing that. What you're going to be doing is you're going to be self-milling. You're going to be getting things into your graveyard, and this doubles that up for you again. Basically expands your graveyard hand escape hand size. There you go. Next up, Monastery Siege. Yet another amazing enchantment for you. Enchantment for 2 mana, now or 3 mana, 2 and a blue, I should say. Enter, choose cons, dragon, choose cons. At the beginning of your draw step, draw an additional card, then discard a card. Again, just a very simple draw an extra card, discard a card can be great because, again, keep in mind, your graveyard is basically an extension of your hand. So let's say you draw 2 awesome things. You're like, oh, okay, well, I'll just discard my enchantment because I can still play it out of that graveyard. And also just filling your graveyard is a good thing, obviously, because you need those extra 3 cards to get rid of when you escape your cards. Or if you want to protect things, basically, Dragons gives your stuff ward too, essentially. So there you go. Next up, Oath of Jace. Now, this is where we get into some areas where you can do some pretty cool and crazy things with this commander. Enters the battlefield, draw 3 cards, discard 2 cards. That's quite nice for this 3 mana. And don't worry about that Planeswalker thing. I mean, that can be nice if you do so, but when it comes to these kinds of cards, you also might want some ways to potentially sacrifice these enchantments so you can get them back again, and again. A very simple sacrifice outlet could be something like Claws of Gix. Now, this is not an enchantment, unfortunately, but still a very good card for this stack. Pay 1, sacrifice a permanent, you gain 1 life. Now, gaining 1 life, that's not really all that, you know, impressive. That's nice little additional thing. That the important thing here is basically, again, sacrificing any permanents, including enchantments, for cheap. That can have a lot of great implications. or certain ones that, you can sacrifice and get back anyways, like Mesmeric Trance. Enchantment for 3 mana in blue, can move upkeep of 1. Pay a single blue mana, discard a card from your hand to draw a card. Again, this can be an amazing draw engine for you, or should I say card selection engine for you. Again, getting things into your graveyard, that can be great, replacing them. But yeah, with this, you normally would be like, okay, I got to keep paying mana to keep this around. And you can for a little bit maybe, but at some point, the cumulative upkeep is going to get very, very expensive to pay. And then you sacrifice and you're like, oh no. Okay, I guess I'll just replay it from my graveyard. Thank you! So yeah, a card like this that might not have a lot of applications in Commander can have a lot of applications with this kind of a deck. Next up, Lich's Knight's Conquest. Now, depending on how you build this deck, okay, this can be an amazing card for it. Sacrifice any number of artifacts, enchantments, and/or tokens. Return that many creature cards to your graveyard to the battlefield. Again, sacrificing enchantments can actually be a very good thing. I mean, like, Reprocess is another one that can help you out too with drawing. This one, though, is more so like, hey, do you also have, like, big creatures in your graveyard, or creatures that you want to cheat into play as well? Maybe there's some enchantment creatures that you have too, but yeah, sacrificing your enchantments that you might want in your graveyard anyway so you can recast them, get their ETB again or whatnot, helps you cheat into play a lot of creatures, so keep this in mind as well. Mace Enchantress, yeah, any Enchantress style effects are incredible with this, obviously. Whenever you cast an enchantment spell, you may draw a card. Again, if you've got a lot of enchantments in the deck, which you probably will, cool, good for you. And also when you're casting them out of your graveyard, good for you as well. Hatching Plans, again, a card that like doesn't have a home really ever. But this kind of a card can be great if your deck is built around, these kind of like getting enchantments in, getting them out, getting them in, getting them out. Enchantment for 2 mana in total. Whenever this is put in your graveyard from the battlefield, draw 3 cards. This is a 2 mana draw spell that, again, if you can keep sacrificing it, getting it back, sacrificing it, getting it back, sacrificing, getting it back, can be an amazing draw engine for you. Next up, speaking of that though, the Meat Hook Massacre. Let's get into some pricey cards now. Yeah, $40, that's quite pricey. Legendary enchantment for X, black. Enters, each creature gets -X until end of turn. Creature control dies, each opponent loses 1 life. Whenever creature and opponent controls dies, you gain 1 life. That's nice. This is a repeatable board wipe for you with this kind of a commander, because again, you take things out, you sacrifice this, you play it again. You take things out, you sacrifice, you play it again. They can definitely be a good resource for you. And again, if your commander has a lot of counters on it, it can avoid a board wipe like this and survive. Next up, Attunement. This is a card that I thought about that actually is kind of with the deck, but not with the deck in what it wants to do. It's kind of funny. Enchant for 3 mana, bounce it back to your hand, draw 3, discard 4. Now, it is with the deck where you want to fill your graveyard. It's not one, though, that like you'll just be like, oh, I need to keep getting this back in my graveyard, because you're like bringing it back to your hand and then replaying it. So do keep that in mind. That being said, yeah, filling your graveyard is a good thing. I also just thought of River Kelpie. I don't know why I didn't include that one yet, but that's a good one as well. Ones that benefit you from casting things out of your graveyard. Keep that in mind, too. Anyways, next up, Psychic Vortex. Yet another cumulative upkeep that is kind of weird. But yeah, you want to be careful with this one. Enchantment for 4 mana in blue. Cumulative upkeep, draw a card. At the end of each of your turns, sacrifice a land and discard your hand. Again, if you have those outlets, that can be a good way to be like, yeah, at some point I don't want that, but you don't even need to do that with this one, because again, it has that upkeep where you can be like, yeah, I'm not gonna pay, draw a card. Cool, yeah, okay, so I will just, sacrifice this, and then I don't have to lose a land in my hand. That being said, this can build up to a great resource for you, because again, it can draw you so many cards, and discarding your hand might not be a bad thing if you've got a bunch of enchantments that you can utilize out of your graveyard anyways. Next up, a card that I referenced earlier, Morality Shift. Wizards, reprint this, please. Source for your 7 mana, exchange your graveyard in your library, then shuffle your library. Basically, your library becomes your graveyard. So essentially, you just say like, oh, okay, cool, I've got 80 or so cards now in my graveyard. Basically, just my entire library now I've got at my fingertips. All those enchantments I can cast out of my graveyard. What's not to love about that? Speaking of what's not to love, Decree of Silence. This is brutal. Be careful. You might lose your friends with this one. Enchant for 8 mana in total. But our opponent plays a spell. Counter that spell, put a depletion counter on Decree of Silence. Then if there are 3 or more depletion counters on it, sacrifice it. You can cycle away, but don't do that with this kind of a deck. Because, I mean, I guess you can get out of your graveyard and then do it again. That being said, get this in play. It counters 3 spells. Oh no, okay, opponents. Haha, you just wasted all that, resources. Great, good for you. Oh, by the way, I'm going to get this back into play by escaping it. And then it's going to counter 3 more spells. Then do it again. And again. Have fun, opponents. And there's some brutal things you can do with this commander, too. Next up, we've got Soaring Lightbringer, a 4/5 bird glimmer, flying for 5 mana in white. Other enchantment creatures you control have flying. Whenever you attack a player, create a 1/1 white glimmer enchantment creature token that's tapped at attacking that player. So that is quite nice, being able to give your creatures flying that are enchantments. Obviously, if you have an enchantment creature deck, this is a slam dunk in that kind of a deck. But it's also just like in a go wide strategy. Yeah, this could also see play because it doesn't have to necessarily be enchantments that you care about. You're just like, okay, I swing at that opponent, I swing at that opponent, I swing at that opponent. Congratulations, you swung at all 3 players. You get 3 tokens that are tapped at attacking those players. They have flying. They typically can get through on opponents. That can be quite nice. But yeah, I mean, if you've got any of the like ETB, draw a card when enchantment comes into play, you are salivating at the mouth right now because it's going to draw you a ton of cards as well. Next up, that's Secret Arcade / Dusty Parlor. Secret Arcade says, non-land permanents you control and permanent spells you control are enchantment sets for their types. Yeah, there's some weird combo things you can do with that. That's basically Enchanted Evening in a way. Dusty Parlor, though, whenever you cast an enchantment spell, put a number of counters equal to that spell's mana value on up to 1 target creature. Also a very good effect. Obviously, they work really good in tandem together, so have fun with this one. Yeah, there's definitely some combos. Again, basically just like go on to Commander Spellbook, look up Enchanted Evening combos, have fun with that. But yeah, if you've got an Enchantress deck, this is a really good card for that deck, most likely. Next up, Redress Fate. A source for 8 mana in total, though the miracle cost of this one is just 4. Return all artifact and enchantment cards from your grave to the battlefield. Yeah, that's quite nice. Being able to just bring back all of your things is huge. There are other... I'm thinking there's another, it's like Open the Vaults. Is that the one where it's like 6 mana, but all your opponents get their things back too? That being said, this is just for you. It's quite nice. And again, Miracle can be a huge play for this one. If you're in that kind of a Miracle-ish deck where you're like manipulating the top of your library, maybe you know what's on top, you can draw this when you need to. Again, on your opponent's turn, you could Miracle this and cast it on their turn. And yes, you can get around cast restrictions for that. Casting it instant speed, basically. Bringing back all your things out of nowhere. That can be massive. But again, even if not, still a great play for you. Next up, Phenomenon Investigators. A 3/4 human attack to the cost 4 mana and Dimir. And they are in trouble. As it enters, choose Believe or Doubt. Believe whenever a non-token creature control dies, create a 2/2 Black Horror enchantment creature token. Doubt at the beginning of your end step, you may return a non-land permanent you own to your hand. If you do, draw a card. Yeah, I'd say that when it comes to what most decks are going to use this for, it'd be that Believe part because, again, replacing your non-token creatures with 2/2s every single time they die, that can be absolutely massive. Aristocrat-style commanders definitely can consider something like this. The other part, though, yeah, if you got maybe like ETBs, if you've got like a lot of creatures that have great ETBs, maybe a blink deck in a way, or things that you actually want to recast, consider that too. But yeah, I think the most of it will probably be the Believe part. Next up, Metamorphosis Fanatic. A 4/4 human cleric with lifelink for 6 mana in black. Enters, return to 1 target creature card from your graveyard to the battlefield, a lifelink counter on it. Yeah, there is no, I was waiting for it to be like, hey, finality counter, hey, enters if you cast it. No, and you can just Miracle this for 2, so yeah, this could definitely combo with some things, because you can just freely bring things back out of your graveyard when you ETB with this. So yeah, this like Karmic Guide-esque basically, but without the, you know, echo cost on it, quite nice. So yeah, there are definitely combos with this as well. I mean, just in general, if you're not trying to combo with it, sure. I mean, a commander deck that cares about, graveyard and reanimation and discarding and wheels and lifelink, I guess, sure. But overall, a cool combo card. Next up, Fear of Sleep Paralysis, a 6/6 enchantment creature nightmare with flying for 6 mana in blue. Whenever it and another enchantment you control enters, and whenever you fully unlock a room, tap up to 1 target creature, put a stun counter on it. Stun counters can't be removed from permanents your opponent's control. That is brutal. Oh my gosh. Okay. All right, well, that's cool. Yeah, so your opponent's things just get tapped down permanently. It is just creatures, luckily. But you might have other ways to get stun counters on other things too. Brutal. But yeah, this and any kind of a deck that can, you know, I guess get a lot of enchantments in play. So a Chandra style deck, obviously. A Blink deck as well. And again, this kind of card that I keep saying this, like, don't just like read this card and be like, it says fully unlock a room, so I'm not going to play it because of that. You can just ignore that. If you have a room deck, cool. If not, it does not matter at all. Yeah, that's huge. Also, proliferate decks as well, because it's like, okay, you can build up those counters on creatures. They can't be removed, and even if this does get removed, they'll never be able to untap by the time, you know, things happen. So it's a really cool, really good card. Next up, Ancient Cellar Spawn, a 3/3 that costs 3 mana. Each spell you cast as a demon, horror, or nightmare costs 1 less to cast. When you cast a spell, if the amount of mana spent to cast less than its mana value, target opponent loses life equal the difference. That's spicy. So obviously, any of those tribal decks out there could utilize this card because that is, some nice cost reduction. That being said, that last part is really cool where it's like, hey, are you cheating on mana value? Cool. Awesome. All right. Drain opponents. So yeah, this plus Omniscience, or obviously you can just move Omniscience in a lot of different ways, but this plus ways that you're cheating. Phyrexian mana costs as well. Additional reductions too. So that could be, there's a lot of different applications for this with the type of deck that could utilize it. It's also pretty narrow, but it's also pretty broad in a weird way like that. Finally, though, we've got Cramped Vents and Access Maze. Cramped Vent says, when you unlock this door, this room deals 6 damage to target creature and opponent controls. You gain life equal to the excess damage dealt this way. And then Access Maze says, once during each of your turns, you may cast a spell from your hand by paying life equal to its mana value rather than paying its mana cost. Cheating things into play is always going to be powerful. And yeah, it costs you some life, but who cares? So yeah, that can be quite powerful. It is only doing once during your turns, so do keep that in mind. The other side is like some nice removal / life gain for you. Yeah, pretty specific on what kind of decks might want this. Like just a not Joda deck necessarily, but yeah, like a big giant spells deck where you're just like, okay, cool, yeah, I'm fine with losing some life for that. Great, awesome. A swap life deck could actually use this as well. Lots of different cool applications for Cramped Vents and Access Maze. And with that, this episode is coming to a close. Comment below with your thoughts on it. And of course, as always, thanks again and have a good one. This show and episodes like this one are possible thanks to viewers like you. If you're looking for an easy way to help support this show, make sure that you like, share, and subscribe. Also, hit that bell notification icon so you don't miss any new episodes. You can also go check out our playmats and other merchandise at thecommandersquarters.com. We also have a ton of brand new t-shirt designs in stock, so make sure you check out those as well. Another easy way to support this show is with our TCG Player affiliate links. So whether you're buying a deck or individual cards, you can use this general link right here or one in the description. And the final way that you can support this show is by supporting us directly by becoming a patron. There are many benefits to being a patron, and I truly couldn't do this without all of their support.